Last Friday, many of Australia's commercial radio stations took a step forward. Some are calling it a giant leap when they began broadcasting in stereo. Now, the newer and fewer FM stations have done so since their recent arrival, but now most of the long-existing AM stations are pumping out stereo as well. Putting together this story late last week, though, I discovered that it's turned out to be a technological cart before the horse affair.
Man who simply calls himself Alston Koch, Sri Lankan born with Try Again. Good sound on 5AD. And good morning, I'm John Dean.
Until now, you've only heard 5AD in mono. But from this Friday, 5AD will be broadcasting in real-life stereo.
Stereo AM.
And
that announcement comes after about 30 years of engineering research into how AM broadcasting stations could go stereo. Since the late 70s, the American transmitter manufacturers have been experimenting, and no less than 5 ways of doing it have emerged. It's been very similar to the introduction of video cassette recorders, where 2 technical formats, beta and VHS, have won out, while others have fallen by the wayside.
So call into any major sound centre and ask to hear 5AD in stereo.
Stereo AM.
It's the Motorola system which Australians will hear after a government inquiry decided to opt for one transmission system only. The Americans typically are letting the marketplace sort it out, and that in itself is raising important issues in Australia. In fact, stereo AM's arrival is posing some basic questions for the radio industry and particularly its listeners. First question then, what is it? Well, it is genuine stereo. That's not just a sign on the wall. It isn't just some form of enhanced mono, as some people think. There are 2 channels going out of here all the way to the transmitter. Now, this unit down here controls the transmitter a few kilometres away, and that's where the action is. The breakthrough in AM broadcasting takes place out there at the transmitter, which can now combine the left and the right signal, put them together in what's called angular modulation and send it to us as listeners. What's important for us is that our existing mono receiver can still take that signal and sound the same spot on the dial. But if you've got a new AM stereo receiver, it will decode that signal, take it apart again, and you've got the lot. So now it's arrived in Adelaide. How do you listen to it? The answer is on a special stereo AM receiver. Now comes the hard part, getting hold of one. I've searched up and down the mall, I've talked to retailers, I've talked to major brand manufacturers, and they simply can't sell me one. Why? Let's ask one of them. Wally Neville is a branch manager in a big turnover chain of electrical stores. I asked him if the Japanese manufacturers were holding off because of the American market's indecision about its transmission format.
That's right.
Why won't they make one for Australia?
Well, Australia's only 3 or 4% of the total market, and although we've decided on the Motorola system, it has been licensed by our government, the manufacturers won't bring them or tool up.
Just for our market?
Just for our market.
Wally says any estimate on when receivers will be available would be a wild guess. Big-name distributors I talked to were predicting it'll be between 6 and 12 months before they're widely available. You're telling me to listen to 5AD stereo AM. I can't do it. Isn't there a real frustration problem?
Well, it is frustrating, but I think because February the 1st was placed as the date when AM stereo would be available for broadcast in Australia, that we have to go ahead with it now. But the full campaign for promoting it really won't happen until probably about July or August of this year. So at the moment, it's just a learning process to tell people, and it'll take a long time to get people in Australia to understand that AM stereo is available. If enough people talk about it, sets will become available.
Well, after all that, at last, some good news. After hours of phoning and looking around, I discovered one manufacturer does make a domestic receiver, and as far as I can tell, one shop has them, and this is it. The hi-fi shop proprietor explained that the new receivers take real advantage of the wide-band stereo signal now being transmitted. While FM and AM stereo have their pros and cons in reception terms, is AM stereo worth the trouble?
Oh, definitely, yes, definitely. I like to listen to my favourite stations on AM stereo, as well as listening to my FM stations as well.
There really is a big difference, is there?
Oh, a massive difference. It's a much clearer, nicer, wideband quality to be able to pick up the station easily and pick it up, and the sound quality is there in stereo.
So the AM stations in Adelaide have gone stereo, and on a new AM stereo receiver, it really does sound much better. Unfortunately, though, when it comes to that heavy promotion about you going down to your local shop to hear it, for the moment, that sounds rather like double talk. And a couple of bits of information for you on that. First of all, most people simply won't touch a modification of your old receiver, even if it is already mono AM and FM stereo. And just for the record, as well as the receiver that you saw there, one Walkman unit and 2 or 3 $300 plus car radios and hi-fi modules are also available, in theory. I'd suggest you check with your favourite department store or hi-fi shop before you get excited.